So you've completed your character profile, and now it's time to start thinking about starting your story. So how are you going to introduce this character? My character I decided her name should be Zoe. We already know that she has a green thumb and she likes to garden. I think that she's actually going to work at a community garden before she goes into the story, so she'll have a little bit of experience with plants. And I think she also likes chess, and I decided that she's a very loyal friend. So those are some things I know about my character. Hopefully you know some of your character strengths too, because that will help you to think about what the first scene should be. Often in a story, especially a story where a character goes from one place to another, we want to show where they are to start out. What are their strengths and what's a weakness or two that might need to change through the course of the story? So one idea I have for Zoe is that she could be in the community garden, because that would give us a chance to see her with her green thumb, which is an important part of the story. And she could realize that some plants were being overwatered, and she might not be brave enough to speak up about it, which would give us a chance to see that she's a little bit shy. She doesn't always speak up about things, but she does have a lot of skill with plants. Another possibility is that I could have Zoe maybe walking home from school, and she might be with a friend. So we want to show that she's loyal to this friend, and maybe somebody comes and starts to pick on this other person, and Zoe stands up for her friend. So I'll put stands up for a friend. What else could I do for Zoe? I guess maybe we could have her playing chess. We know that she's a great chess player, so we could have her in a chess competition. And in that competition, we could see that she's strategic, and maybe we would see her being a little bit shy at some point, maybe if somebody's asking her an interview question or something. So as I look at my list, I think my first idea was probably the best one. It's not a bad idea to go through a list, even if your first idea ends up being the one that you want to go with, because by doing this list, I realized that the thing I really want to show is that Zoe not only has a green thumb, but that she's shy. I think that's a really important thing to set up in this first scene. So I want you to take 1 minute and make a list of possible starting scenes. What could show your character's strengths and weaknesses and allow us to get to know them a little bit better before their adventure begins? Now that you have your choice about what your beginning scene will be, you can use the page that says create a beginning scene and make a quick storyboard. The reason that I do this is because coming up with my beginning, middle, and end really quickly before I start helps me to make sure I've got a solid idea for a scene before I start writing sentences on my page. It often saves me a lot of time. So for a scene, you need a location. For mine, I have my community garden. You need your characters, and I know that I have Zoe, and probably I'll need the community garden's head gardener so that Zoe can see her but not speak up about this thing that she's noticing in the garden. And we need to have something happen in the scene. You can't just have your character thinking about something or feeling something. Usually scenes need to have an action, something interesting. Sometimes it's a decision, sometimes it's an argument, sometimes it's a discovery. In our case, it's going to be Zoe's decision not to tell the gardener what she's noticed about the plants. So in my beginning, I'm gonna think about how could I start this scene. I think it will be Zoe coming into the garden with her backpack on. I'm just drawing a stick figure Zoe because I don't want to spend too much time making this a beautiful artwork. And I'm going to have her coming into the garden. Just label that garden. And it might be a sunny day. She's kind of having a happy day. And I want to understand a little bit about how she's feeling too. I think she's feeling pretty happy to come to the garden today. In the middle of the scene, I want her to see that the sunflowers are being overwatered. So I'm gonna draw in some sunflowers and I'm gonna be thinking about them being overwatered. So that would mostly show up in some yellow leaves. So I'll put yellow leaves. And I'm gonna put in the distance the head gardener so that I know that that person is there and she's not sure whether she wants to talk to them. And then the last moment of the scene, the end of the scene, will be Zoe leaving the garden. So I'll have the garden again. She'll be leaving the garden without having spoken to the head gardener. So you can go ahead and create your beginning, middle, and end and just come up with a possibility. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can always change your mind as you're writing, but make sure you have a possible way to start the scene, a middle, and an end. Go ahead and take 90 seconds, and then if you need a little more time to finish drawing out or thinking out those beginning, middle, and end moments, you can pause the video and finish up your work before our final step for this video. Okay, so now you have your beginning, middle, and end, and we're going to think about some possible first sentences. It's one thing to have an idea of what happens, and then the hard part comes when you realize, okay, it's time to write that first sentence. There's 3 possible ways that we can do this. First, we can start with action. My action sentence is, Zoe shook the dirt off her flowered gloves and pulled them on. In the garden shed, she loaded up a tote with a trowel, clippers, and a roll of Velcro to bind the sunflowers to their stakes. Another way that we could start is with dialogue. Here's an example of how I might do that. Morning, Zoe, Ms. Evie said as Zoe entered the community garden. Morning, Zoe said, and then remembered to look Miss Evie in the eye. A small smile tipped the corner of Zoe's mouth upward. Another way we could start a story is with a sound or a smell, and using sensory description, especially sound or smell, can really pull a reader into a story. So here's an example of that. As Zoe opened the community garden's shed door, the sharp smell of fertilizer wafted out, along with the deeper, rich scent of fresh potting soil. Okay, so let's look at these 3 beginning sentences. I liked the one with action because it moved us right into the story. I liked the one with dialogue because it showed off a little bit of Zoe's personality. And I liked the sensory one because it made me really feel like I was in a garden. So I could choose one of those 3, But in my case, I think I'm going to combine them all to see what I can do to make a cohesive beginning that draws us in all three of these ways. Here's what I'm ultimately going to write. Zoe shook the dirt off her flowered gloves and pulled them on. As she opened the community garden's shed door, the sharp smell of fertilizer wafted out, along with the deeper, rich scent of fresh potting soil. She loaded up a tote with a trowel, clippers, and a roll of Velcro to bind the sunflowers to their stakes. On her way to the sunflowers, Zoe passed Miss Evie, the head gardener. Miss Evie was elbow deep in the dirt, weeding a bed of tomatoes. "Morning, Zoe," she called. "Morning," Zoe answered, and then remembered to look Miss Evie in the eye. A small smile tipped the corner of Zoe's mouth upward. One of the things Zoe liked most about Miss Evie was that she didn't expect Zoe to be a chatterbox at the community garden. Zoe could load up her gear, immerse herself in weeding, and whatever else needed to be done. But if she didn't want to, she didn't have to say a word. This beginning helps me to introduce Zoe's strengths and her weaknesses and will help me to go into the rest of my scene that has the beginning, the middle, and the end. So what I want you to do now is to go through that worksheet, come up with an action beginning, come up with a dialogue beginning, come up with a sensory description beginning, and then decide how you want to use them. Maybe you want to put them together like I did. Maybe you want to choose one and go with that. Whatever you do, go ahead and take some time right now to write a beginning scene and see where it takes you. I promise that by the end of the scene, you'll know your main character a lot better. See you soon.